The only relationships that tend to stay together or last a lifetime are usually in a religious environment, and usually where it's a remote rural situation, like the Amish, like homesteaders, just people in small communities from a religious kind of background. So now, I'm not talking 10 years, I'm not talking 20 years, I'm talking, lifetime, 40, 50 years plus, whatever. Now, obviously, we don't have a good sample size for the people that are getting in relationships now. But what we can learn statistically, the bigger the city, the more likely you are likely to get divorced. And why is that? Because she suddenly thinks that she has other options. Now, we already know that 80 to 85% of the time, it is women who initiate divorce. They're incentivized to do so, basically by the court system. If she's repulsed by this guy, she can divorce him, get alimony, child support. And in some states like California, they might have to pay alimony for the rest of their life. That is slavery. Oh my God, don't get married there, guys. Oh my gosh. It's so ridiculous. It's but and it's nightmarish, because let's say maybe you're in the same boat. Maybe you're a guy like me that, would like to have a family. And, it's like, well, what are our options? Get with an Amish girl? I mean, she's going to get shunned for being with an English. That's what they call the regular people. They call them the English. So she's definitely going to get shunned. You can't be with an Amish girl. And let's see, what are other options? I mean, it's just kind of like, now I've tested this theory. I've been to kind of smaller communities. And, you think you were this maybe super stud who walked in, and then you're only a mystique for a week or two, maybe a little longer if you run across somebody new. But for the most part, and you will get the questions, who are you? Or where'd you come from? And, you'll be somewhat of a mystique. But in these smaller communities, how many upper tier girls are there? There's really only going to be 2 or 3 maybe that are sustainably there. And, oftentimes there's a reason why they're single. Usually it's because they're getting so much validation from everybody. Nobody is good enough. Nobody is good enough. Nobody's good enough. And in the past, they might have basically, got with a guy, got engaged, married, have kids, all that kind of stuff. But now, obviously, these women are perpetuating that kind of this, sort of this mentality of, that they have unlimited time. Like a girl that maybe 30 years ago that was 19 would sort of act like that. Now girls, they'll be 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and then suddenly they're 33, 34, especially out west, bigger cities, Miami, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Oh, they still have time. Oh, I still look good. And they might still look good, guys. But really, when it boils down to it, they're perpetuating it. They're perpetuating it so long, and then their expectations are going up. Oh, now this guy needs to make this much, and then this much, and then this much. What I found out over time is a man can survive on $50,000 for the same lifestyle that a woman needs $100,000 for. They're always spending money on frivolous little things, and why is that? They're very emotionally driven. They see something, they want it. They don't analytically kind of sort through what's the best value, what's the best deal usually. Not all the time, but that's just something that I've observed. A woman just needs so much more money to essentially live the same existence as a man. And it seems to be around twice as much. And that is obviously something you guys have probably figured out as well. Most of the guys that are able to sort of accelerate forward, let's say in the last 5-10 years, have usually been guys that are maybe single. And it seems like, single guys end up obviously maybe accumulating more, whereas actually it should be the opposite, because a woman should be a complement to a man, and should be able to work together, and you have shared expenses and all that kind of stuff. But it usually doesn't work out that way, whether it be a time factor or different various things. And obviously having kids totally throws a different dynamic into it. Kids obviously are going to be expensive. There's a lot that goes into that, and so that kind of throws off the dynamic, and you might have different priorities, which obviously that's clear. But really, when it comes down to the relationships that last the longest, is essentially when the woman has seemingly no other options to monkey branch to. Do not underestimate the hypergamous nature of females, guys, because at the end of the day, why would it be so much easier for you to, let's say, go to a Latin American country, go to the Ukraine or something like that, and find actually a woman way more gorgeous than you would be able to actually interact with, here in the United States or in Canada or some other similar type country? It's because your resources could be like above and beyond. So, essentially you become kind of like somewhat rich in comparison. Let's say you go to Mexico, a lot of the stuff usually costs about 1/3 the cost in Mexico as it does in the United States. So suddenly, if you've amassed decent resources here, you go down there, you could be somewhat of a baller. You could live in a nicer place, go on more trips, have more time freedom, and and in a lot of ways, that's going to kind of show through more. Here, the money isn't going to get it for you really here, and the thing is you end up being a target. You end up being, think of it like, let's say a guy that's in the MLB, NBA, NHL, those guys become targets. They actually don't have as much success oftentimes at this point. I mean, I know we hear these stories of Wilt Chamberlain and all these kind of things, but that was in the past. Now you get the Trevor Bauer type situations where they suddenly become a target. So these women are trying to hook up with them, or the situation with Drake, how he put the hot sauce in the condom, and then she tried to take the condom out of the trash and impregnate herself and burned herself. I mean, these guys are targets. So the money's only going to help you really kind of so much. And as soon as you're making, and if you're frugal, and it depends what area of the country, obviously, because obviously $50,000 could go a lot further in a smaller community than, and then maybe if you're in a big city, suddenly it's like you practically have to have $100,000 to make that or something. But as soon as you're making that kind of money, you have reliable transportation, you're able to go on trips, that kind of thing, then you really, it's not going to help you that much more. Now, where would it become a deal breaker? Let's say you do make $100,000, but suddenly, let's say this woman that you're married to or something, suddenly she ends up making $120,000 or $150,000. Well, I've seen a lot of these women get very ego driven. Oh, I make more than you. And I'll tell you what, so my parents are still together and everything, but there was a time where maybe things became more rocky. There was definitely, when I was like in elementary school, I saw them showing each other more affection and stuff. Really, when I got into junior high, there was more issues. I remember my mom just kind of being upset and stuff like that. But if I track it back really to any kind of one particular thing, I would say about the time my mom started making more than my dad, suddenly she thought she was better than him, or that she could do better. She never said that, but just looking back on it, I really think that was kind of a major, situation that occurred. Now, going back to these situations where, the woman's in an isolated situation, and she's whatever, Amish, or she's some sort of religious, there's some sort of religious component to it. It's not going to ultimately stop the situation from her getting a divorce or something if she thinks, well, the church said that, death do us part, and that, essentially I'm going to go to hell if I divorce him, or any of this kind of stuff. That's not going to ultimately stop her, but it might slow her roll and make her kind of think twice about it. The hope is that some of the other people in the community or something. Now, this inlays a problem, because you're not going to suddenly convince yourself to be a Catholic. You're not going to convince yourself to be religious. That is something that is conditioned in you. Every time I pull the car out of the driveway, even if I'm just moving the car 20 feet, I am conditioned to put my seatbelt on from an early age. I just subconsciously just put it on. So women and men that come from religious backgrounds are oftentimes conditioned to believe that that is reality. You're not going to suddenly tell somebody about religion when they're 18 and then they're going to be like, wait, is this a new Lord of the Rings movie? Or is this is this a new video game? They're not going to even know what you're talking about. If you introduce religion to somebody when they're 18, they're going to be confused, and then it'd be like, they're going to be like, wait a minute, you believe this? I mean, nobody would believe religion if they were introduced when they're 18. It just isn't. That isn't something you can just kind of make yourself believe. So therein lays the issue. Do you end up getting with this religious girl, because you think that's maybe going to tie it together more, but then she's saying all this stuff, or maybe she wants to be really involved in the stuff, and that's not your lifestyle? I mean, that can become obviously a major issue. So I really don't have the answer there. Tough one. Very, very tough one. But even when I look back at my grandpa and grandma, really when it came down to it, and I didn't know this until kind of later, and you kind of like look back and kind of think about it more. This freaking gimbal. Stick with me, guys. There we go. So even when I look at my grandma and grandpa, which is kind of a weird situation, it's like my grandma really, my grandma, like, I don't think she ever really finished high school. She's kind of dropped out of high school. And, I don't think she really had a driver's license. I know that sounds weird, but my grandpa always drove everywhere. I don't really think she had a driver's license. And I don't think she could really read that well. Okay, you guys heard that. So, I really don't think she could read that well and all that. So she was very dependent upon my grandpa. And it's almost like the woman has to be kind of dependent upon the man, that he is going to be able to sort of improve their life by a factor of 5 or 10-fold. Whereas, let's say, and would I improve like a ton of women's lives? Of course. I mean, Jesus, like if they just watch my Instagram, unless they're stupid, they would be able to figure that out. But that being said, that doesn't necessarily end up getting you with the upper tier girl, because a lot of times the upper tier girl that's hot, she oftentimes came from, a family that has more resources. I've noticed this. Like, the more money a chick has, the more time she's able to spend on herself, which can, and that can be with more money to spend on dental work, more money spent on makeup, more money spent on just sleeping, more money, because think about that. If she doesn't have to get up and work some part-time job or this or that, like when she's in college, she can just focus on college. She can focus on just being hot. And then, that's typically going to kind of like serve her well kind of into the future. And usually that's because she comes from a family that, can afford to send her to college and not have to pay her way through college and stuff like that. It's not always the situation, but oftentimes I see that it is. And it's going to be hard to improve that girl's like situation that much more. And then secondly, instead of looking for a legit dude, suddenly it's like now they're tempted by like looking for guys who are sugar daddies or getting on OnlyFans, or the girls that don't maybe have as many resources or that just want the validation. So it's a very, very weird environment. That being said, just to reiterate, the only relationships that I see lurking like long, sort of like long duration for a lifetime is really going to be situations where it's like the Amish, super heavily religious, or like homesteader community type people, where there's not other options to jump to. They can't hypergamously jump and monkey branch to anything else. They don't have any other options. And their life is sort of being supported or improved by a magnitude of maybe 5 or 10-fold. And that, but therein lies the issue, because once you get married, men have the power in the relationship. You know, women are the gatekeepers of sex, men are the gatekeepers of relationships until you get married, guys. Until you get married, then the power goes to the woman. How many times have we heard these women say, I'm going to divorce you, or whatever? We hear women say that, or, you know, I've even heard my mom would say, I'm going to divorce your dad, or say something stupid like that, just acting a fool. Anyway, guys, this video has went on longer than I thought, but you get the premise I'm saying. It's got to be pretty much in isolation and practically a very, very, almost like practically an 1800s lifestyle with no other options. Anyway, guys, talk to you later. Ring that bell icon, subscribe to this YouTube channel.